Good afternoon. So we are going to give it about 20 seconds to get the attendance list filled up so that nobody misses this all exciting topic and thematic area for this afternoon SDM event. I'll give you a bit of a background as to what the SDM is all about and why the OECS stands tall in bringing this all exciting opportunity for knowledge sharing and ideas. So as we continue to look through the concept of the post-pandemic, obviously the OECS continues to strive to bring together the integration of the member states and across the globe to connect a host of entrepreneurs, a host of stakeholders as we continue to grow, strength to strength to develop, the best strategies for development across the sphere. So within the context of the post-pandemic world and the need to make development happen where innovation is fueled that allows large ocean economies to stand out, the OECS aspires to fast-track the Eastern Caribbean Economic Union through disruptions, solid innovations, and agility, thereby fostering exponential growth and inclusion for all. In light of this, the Sustainable Development Movement 2021 seeks to advance all 17 Sustainable Development Goals with specific focus on the economy, human development, health, the environment, and youth. I want to take this opportunity to call out our partners, our platinum sponsors for this year's event, the USAID, the Thoughtful Digital Agency, key partners, the World Bank, GEF, Caribbean Regional Oceanscape Project, REMLIT, CID, FAO, and Relaciones Exteriores. So again, I'm just going to give another 20 seconds that we get the participants list loaded up so we could introduce our first panelist for this afternoon's discussion. Our topic this afternoon is along the lines of innovative MSMEs, supporting sustainable growth. And as we continue to think about the idea of a post-pandemic, the idea of the new normal, as we call it, obviously speaking directly to what can we do to derive and to develop, and obviously to entice entrepreneurship, development of incubation, development of acceleration. How can we expect across sectors to take the opportunities with a digitized space, with the access to financing, with the access to new ideas, and help build a proper and sustainable economic future. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker on the cards today, and his name is Ashley Parasan, Managing Director of Trinidad and Tobago Cocoa Company. So Ashley, if you could just put on your video so we can get you into context here. And good afternoon, how are you today?
Very well, thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and present today.
Great, so I'm going to give a profile so that our listeners and viewers can have a bit of background as to who you are and what you do and what your thematic area would be for today. So Ashley graduated with a master's from the University of Edinburgh in Natural Resource Management. He spent 18 years working on designing sustainable development and international aid programs at the UK Department for International Development, Consultative Group for International Agriculture Research in Indonesia, European Forest Institute in Finland, and the International Institute for Environment and Development in the United Kingdom. He has recently worked on sustainable cocoa standards for exports in partnership with the Inter-American Development Bank and the University of the West Indies. Ashley established and Tobago Fine Cocoa Company in 2016 with the aim of rehabilitating the national cocoa sector. The project has developed partnerships with international brands such as Hilton Hotel Group, Hyatt Regency Hotel Group, Harrods Stores, and Angostura Distilleries Limited. Ashley will speak to us today on how can MSMEs support sustainable growth, describe the ideal enabling environment that needs to be created in order to ensure that MSMEs support sustainable growth. Ashley, over to you, my friend.
Well, thank you very much, Kareem, and thank you very much to all the attendees for the time to join, and most of all to the organizers for organizing this fantastic event. So basically, one of the biggest challenges with regards to sustainable growth and how do we support sustainable growth? Well, as Kareem explained, I'm not a chocolatier and I'm a development specialist. And so what that means is that for the past 7 years, I've been working in Trinidad, developing and working with the cocoa sector in looking at how we rehabilitate the cocoa sector. At the very beginning of this, the Trinidad and Tobago Fine Cocoa Company was established to look at ways to stimulate this sustainable growth of the sector. And we were, for the initial period, very excited about the potential and the opportunities for the cocoa sector. However, the past 18 months has presented a fresh challenge. And so for me, what I would like to present to you is really around how did we address that challenge, specifically with the challenges of COVID and the effects of that. How do we embrace sustainable growth, but how did we embrace it using the digital world? So clearly for us, when COVID started, most of our clients that we were working with, Caribbean Airlines, Hilton Hotels, Harrods stores in England, they depended on supply chains, they depended on tourism, and that quickly stopped. So for us, we needed to reinvent ourselves, and to reinvent ourselves, we really needed to improve the understanding of the digital world. So in that in mind, we had to focus the entire business, our business strategy, and really get a better understanding of what tools existed in the digital world to help us refocus and point into a new future, a more COVID resilient future. So in part of this, we really wanted to work out what is our digital objectives in looking at supporting sustainable growth. And for us, one of the key objectives we found is the ability to, well, I should have actually mentioned that although our mission and vision was around stimulating the cocoa sector in Trinidad, we do work with partners throughout the Caribbean region, in Grenada, St. Lucia, Belize, Venezuela. There's many other countries that we partner with. So we're hoping that some of the lessons here today might be applicable for them as well. But really, what was the digital objectives that we had? Well, effectively, there were three. It was clear that COVID has fragmented and has created such a disturbance globally. But clearly, there was an appetite for people to understand stories. So for us, we took creating the unique storytelling experience to our customers was a key component of that. And so the field to fork approach for us was quite important. And that storytelling, the ability to now use social media where people could not travel, but use their digital tools is now a very important communication channel for us. So that was our first objective. The other change we saw with COVID was the ability of online e-commerce platforms. And we've seen this in Trinidad, whereby there was a greater push on e-commerce tools. There was also a greater push on home food delivery systems. And this meant that it was a lot easier that people could now purchase and have products delivered. And we really need to capitalize on that. And our third objective was to really find a way of improving our internal systems and our efficiencies. Because clearly with supply chains that have been disrupted, the cost of freight, sea freight going up, the cost of getting hold of international supply ingredients and packaging, we clearly needed to address those things. So where we found the challenges in the past 18 months, we've decided to address them in this way. What digital tools did we use? Well, for us, it was very important that we looked at social media tools. A lot of you will already be familiar with the Instagram and Bespoke, those sorts of Facebook app tools. But there were other areas that we'd be very keen to develop. And those things included augmented reality and also even virtual reality. So for us, using digital tools is a very important part of that. a key component as well is understanding our e-commerce platforms ourselves. We partnered with DHL to look at home delivery services, but really what we wanted to do was that one-click purchase, that Amazon-esque purchase that that many people around the world have come to expect. So the idea of using these third-party platforms and one-click purchase systems was also quite important to us. And then it was really looking at the internal systems, as I mentioned. So our client management systems, how do we manage information? How do we understand our customers better? And all of these components played a part into helping us refocus the business. And it was from these components that really allowed us to move from hospitality and retail in the chocolate world into more a industrial product area. So it has been actually quite successful. But then again, this is something that takes time to build and convert. And for us, one of the key components with these systems is ensuring that they are able to interconnect with each other. So this is something that for us, we have been focusing very heavily on. So with all of these elements, what do we expect? How are we going to navigate the next 12 months? And it's clear that COVID is not going to go away. It's clear that we're going to have greater challenges ahead. So what can we expect in terms of supporting sustainable growth using technology? Well, we hope that using this approach, we're expecting a greater emotional connection to our customers, our supporters. And we have to also look at our customers as being supporters, because here one thing that COVID has done is accelerated the digital world, the use of digital technology, and there's a much more emotional buy-in by your customers to become supporters. There's definitely a great understanding with what we can offer in Trinidad, but in the Caribbean as well in terms of our cocoa product. And for us, we are also looking at other innovative ways to bring in and engage through crowd farming systems, a bit like crowdfunding. So these tools continue to be very important in how we develop and evolve. But one of the things we also have addressed is the need to look at reducing our costs and in dealing with buffer time, or how do we deal with just-in-time supply chains. So there's so many other components that we expect to see in the next few months and hopefully the next year that will help make us be more resilient with developing the cocoa sector, but developing our relationship with our customers and our clients. It is clear that our partners with Hilton Hotels and Hyatt Hotels and Caribbean Airlines will take another 12 months, if not longer, to get their numbers back up. So during that time, what we do is work with them in a much more strategic way of a hand-in-hand partnership and developing that, that process together as well. So for us, you can see that digital tools can help to be adaptable and flexible in very challenging times. And it is important that we use these tools as they are there in order to connect, engage, trade, work with, and learn from our customers. But it is something that is an opportunity that I believe the Caribbean can rise to the challenge of. We have the expertise to be able to build apps, to build websites, to build e-commerce platforms. We have the knowledge to be able to get out there and do the marketing and branding. And we have the infrastructure in terms of transportation, delivery systems to be able to get the product to the consumer. We do export our products as far as Australia, to Canada, to Europe, using our partnership with DHL. So although COVID has disrupted us from inbound visitors, we have now gone outbound. And I do believe that this sort of strategy is how we would look at supporting and connecting to the sustainable growth for the sector in the Caribbean. I think that is a huge potential. And for us, we believe that this is the future for the Caribbean in the coming years. So with that in mind, I would just like to say thank you very much, Kareem. Thank you for the opportunity to quickly present that, and I look forward to a further discussion with the panel.
Thank you, Ashley. In fact, spot on in terms of your time allotment. I did not have to rush you off, but great conversation, and especially in understanding how the digital growth would help your firm to become better at the work that we are doing across the Caribbean. To bring it into context in terms of export development, let me introduce Deodat Maharaj, head of the Carib Export Development Agency. And Deodat will help us to understand how can MSMEs support sustainable growth from a regional perspective within the context of export development. And I could give you just a bit of a background. Deodat Maharaj is the executive director of the Caribbean Export Development Agency, the Caribbean regional institution with the remit to support private sector development and steer foreign direct investment to the region. Deodat, a national of Trinidad and Tobago, previously served as Deputy Secretary General of the Commonwealth, where he spearheaded the trade and investment agenda, and with the United Nations in senior roles in the field and at headquarters. He has extensive experience in international trade and investment in a career spanning 25 years. He knows the Caribbean well, having lived and worked in Barbados, Guyana, Suriname, and Trinidad. Deodat, thank you and good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karim, and a pleasant good afternoon to my fellow panel members, Greg and Ashley, and to all those who are tuned in St. Lucia across this beloved Caribbean of ours and further afield. A pleasant good afternoon, good evening, or even good morning if you're tuned in from Asia. I think the first task for me is to situate MSMEs in the Caribbean and to demonstrate their importance. For those who may not know, micro, small, and medium scale enterprises account for 50% of employment across this Caribbean of ours. In terms of all the businesses that we have across the Caribbean, they account for between 70 to 80% of all enterprises. And in terms of GDP, they account for between 60 to 70% of GDP. So without a doubt, I think that data will give a very clear picture on the importance of this sector to our economies and ability to build a resilient Caribbean. And I think it would be remiss of me if I don't speak about COVID-19 and the impact on this sector. We did a study together with the Caribbean Development Bank last year, where we asked 484 enterprises what has been the impact of COVID-19. Around 79% of those who responded indicated that finance was a big issue. 50% said they had to close or halt operations, and sadly, 40% of them said they had to retrench staff. And that's like a big issue, because as we indicated before, they account for around 50% of employment, and jobs in the times that we live in, they're an absolutely precious commodity. And therefore, looking ahead, this is why I was enjoying listening to Ashley, and I so readily agreed to participate today. Because to build a resilient Caribbean, our MSMEs have to think beyond St. Lucia, beyond St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and indeed beyond the Caribbean. And that's precisely the work that we do at the Caribbean Export Development Agency. So I just want to make a couple points in the very limited time that we have. One, business as usual certainly isn't going to work. We have to leverage technology and the unique opportunities provided by digitalization. And I'm also happy that I'm speaking after Ashley, because by sheer coincidence, I actually visited the Chocolate Box, his business place at the Hilton Hotel in Trinidad and Tobago last week. And what it reinforced the view that I have and we at Caribbean Export have is that we in the Caribbean cannot mass produce. So that's what we know for sure. And therefore, what we need to do, we need to focus on one, niche products for niche markets at premium prices. And Ashley perhaps didn't have the time to say it, or maybe I didn't hear it, but cocoa in Trinidad and Tobago, for example, is ranked in the top 2% in terms of quality globally. So we can't mass produce like a Cote d'Ivoire or like a Ghana, but in terms of quality, for sure. So we have a niche product for a niche market at a premium price. So that's the first point I wanted to make. The second point has to do with services. For us in the Caribbean, we often tend to think about goods, so about cocoa, about having a sugar, cane, a commodity. But what our MSMEs are not working hard enough in as yet, it's the services sector. And we at the Caribbean Export Development Agency, and certainly I believe that services, they represent the next frontier for Caribbean business. And when I talk about services, I'm speaking specifically of non-tourism related services. So how do we tap into the creativity of our people? How do we commoditize our music, our fashion, our carnival, build a commodity out of it and earn money and create jobs and opportunity for our people? And I like to be specific because I know the people who are listening to this particular panel discussion, they perhaps would you want to know more about what people are practically and concretely doing. So I can give a good example. So for example, at the Caribbean Export Development Agency, we have a business of music program where just about a month and a half ago, we launched a program where we had 120 artists from across the Caribbean, where we are working with them to help them transition to not only being an artist, but also being a business person, and how to create your music and how to use platforms such as Spotify to upload your content so you can create jobs and earn a good income and a good living wherever you are in the Caribbean. So you don't have to physically go to a carnival in Miami or Caribana in Canada or carnival in New York or Notting Hill. You can create your content, upload it on these platforms, and generate a livelihood wherever you are. So services, I believe, is really a critical dimension of work that we must continue to support, but more MSMEs must enter into. The emphasis in my presentation and when the organizers spoke with me was to make sure that about sustainability. And that's an important issue. And therefore, there's an emerging market, not only for premium products, but products that can be branded as sustainable. And therefore, we have teamed up with the International Trade Center out of Geneva. It's a United Nations organization to establish a green to compete trade hub right here in the Caribbean. And we have 3 countries that we are piloting this initiative in. One is Guyana, 2 is Barbados, and the 3rd is St. Lucia. And in essence, what we are doing, we are working with businesses across these 3 countries, helping them to understand and to build a brand and a product that will meet sustainability criteria. Once you meet that sustainability criteria, as I'm sure Ashley's product will, you get a premium product for what a price and you get a premium price for a product that will be considered high quality, meeting sustainability criteria. So MSMEs must look at these new opportunities as well, because you have, take for example, the European Union. You have a market of over 500 million. You have a market in the United Kingdom, in Canada, in North America, with a sophisticated consumer base willing to pay the extra dollar, the extra pound, the extra euro for a product that would meet sustainability criteria. So I would encourage those who are listening to go to our website, carib-export.com, to learn a bit more of this initiative. A third point that I wanted to convey is that we cannot have products that are sustainable if it is that we use very inefficient energy. In the Caribbean, linked to that issue is that the cost of energy in our region is the highest on our planet. So that raises a number of issues. One, it makes it difficult for us to compete because our product is costing more. And secondly, and equally important, is the fact that it wouldn't meet sustainability criteria. And therefore, what is really important is that as we transition to renewables, our businesses also do the same. And we at the Caribbean Export Development Agency, we actually have a specific program where we are working with businesses, supporting them across the Caribbean to become more energy efficient. So that is a critical point. The last point I want to talk about and to emphasize really has to do with the trade agreements. So we have a multiplicity of trade agreements with the European Union, with the United Kingdom, with Canada, with the United States of America. and we are not taking advantage of it. So please do visit our website because they represent unique opportunities where our goods can enter these markets duty-free, tariff-free, quota-free. And then finally, we need a strong supporting architecture for our MSMEs. The Caribbean is a very difficult place to do business. In the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business report, the last report that I read, 2020, we rank in the bottom half of around 200 countries globally, with Jamaica being around in the mid-60s and St. Lucia in the mid-90s. That certainly is not acceptable. That's one. And secondly, finance is absolutely critical. We need to create an environment where businesses can access finance. And that's why we at the Caribbean Export Development Agency, we have a direct assistance grant scheme where we provide up to 15,000 euros, about 18,000 United States dollars on a grant basis to MSMEs across the Caribbean. Visit our website and look for the next call. So in essence, what I would urge all partners, one, we need to work together. Secondly, recognizing the importance of this sector. They form the backbone of our economies, and policymakers and directing attention as we have tried to fast track our post-COVID-19 recovery, the absolute priority by policymakers and all development partners must be on this sector. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Deodat, for this all-encompassing, encouraging, enticing, exciting conversation and bringing into context the export development component within the idea of an innovative MSME across our Caribbean region. And earlier today, with one of our events, of course, we discussed the innovation in agriculture. And right now, I'd like to introduce Greg Rollins, who hails from AICA, to discuss with us how can MSMEs support sustainable growth from a regional perspective within the context of the agriculture sector. So Greg is a national of Barbados, so was appointed representative of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, AICA, in the Eastern Caribbean countries. With effect from July 1, 2019, Mr. Rollins has over 30 years of experience in the field of agriculture at both the national and regional levels in the Caribbean region. Immediately prior to his current appointment, Mr. Rollins served as AICA representative in Trinidad and Tobago 2008 and 2019. An agricultural economist, Mr. Rollins has held positions with several key multinational agencies in the region. Mr. Rollins served as trade policy specialist and consultant project manager with the FAO, CARICOM, CARIFORUM, food security project between 2004 and 2007. He has also held positions as agricultural economist and senior project officer in economic policy and sectoral programs within CARICOM Secretariat in Georgetown. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Greg Rollins to the panel today and to guide us on the thoughts around agriculture as we drive through an innovative MSME. Greg, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kareem, and a pleasant good afternoon to all who are joining us. Let me also recognize the fellow panelists, Ashley and Deodat, and the organizers of this very exciting event, this Sustainable Development Movement Summit. ICA is extremely pleased to have this opportunity. We welcome the opportunity to share some perspectives from the agricultural sector with respect to MSMEs and how they support sustainable growth. And I must say that some of the issues that were raised by both Ashley and Deodat obviously will also appear as I go through my brief presentation. This first slide sums up essentially where MSMEs and agriculture come in. We believe that our MSMEs do foster that marriage between entrepreneurship and agriculture. And this creates an effective engine for job creation and inclusive growth. So we believe that this statement that goes back to the European Commissioner for Development in 2013 remains very relevant, and that our MSMEs in the agri-food sector are essentially the ones forging that relationship between agriculture and entrepreneurship. Deodat would have referred to the data. I don't want to repeat it, But just to emphasize again the point that he made, when you look at the data, it is clear that the MSMEs are at the heart of our economies. When you look at job creation, when you look at GDP, when you look at the contribution to sustainable development goals as a percentage of all businesses, our MSMEs are essentially at the core of our economic and business landscape. And we therefore, if we are going to achieve sustainable growth, we need to address our MSMEs and their development. I just wanted to quickly, since the conversation is about sustainable growth, I just wanted to say briefly that as it relates to our MSMEs in the agri-food sector, we believe that they have some unique characteristics that really position them well to contribute to sustainable growth when you look at the social, economic, and environmental perspectives. From an economic point of view, many of our MSMEs in the agri-food sector have strong linkages to primary production, more so than some of the larger food manufacturers. In fact, many of them depend almost exclusively on primary production, which tends to fuel primary production in our rural communities, in our agricultural communities. So we have high multiplier effects because they're both backward and forward linkages that they do pursue. They're also considered to be strong stewards of the natural environment, natural resources. They valorize our diversity. And from a social perspective, when you look at 40% of the MSMEs being women-led businesses, it has implications for our standard of living, the issues for reducing poverty, for inclusivity, as well as for health, education, and general welfare of our people. At the same time, we know that tomorrow, the UN will be convening its Food Systems Summit to look at how we could transform our food systems towards the post-COVID recovery process, as well as to contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. And we see our agri-MSMEs as also being key features of contributing to sustainable food systems. The conversation now is about how can food systems make a much greater contribution to our economies and to the Sustainable Development Goals. And we believe that this, again, emphasizes the importance of our agri-MSMEs in the whole conversation from all the dimensions, the economic, the social, and the environmental dimensions. Having said this, for us, our experience in ICA is that one of the big issues is the progression of MSMEs. We believe that this matters most. What we've been experiencing and seeing is that as we move from opportunity recognition to opportunity focusing, commitment of resources, market entry, and the full launch and growth, that we are seeing a low turnover rate. In other words, there's a lot of unrealized potential. We have MSMEs with great products, great services, very innovative approaches and processes, but many of them are not getting through to market entry and full launch. And even when they do get through, some of them are lost by the second year of operations. And we therefore need to understand why is it that we have this low turnover rate and how can we increase this turnover rate, which would allow our MSMEs to even make a greater contribution to our economies and to sustainable growth that we strive to achieve. We see three broad areas of impediments: MSME progression, information asymmetries, weak collaboration, and poor access to finance. I know some of these have been mentioned before. That would have mentioned the issue of poor access to finance. But we know there are a range of other areas, many other issues that can be put on the table. But these three broad headings are key for us. In relation to the asymmetries in information, we recognize that many of our MSMEs have to spend a lot of time, cost, and effort to understand the lay of the land. There's often no central repository of information, and therefore there are a lot of structural and informal barriers to entry. And therefore we see the issue of creating that more MSME-friendly business environment that Deodat referred to as being critical. What we often say is that we recognize that it is not just about creating incentives, but more so about removing the disincentives that really and truly face many of our MSMEs. And we also need to foster a lot more peer and near-peer mentoring among MSMEs. As it relates to collaboration, we recognize that this is weak not only among the MSMEs, and therefore they are unable to leverage economies of scale or scope for clustering. But it's also little coordination sometimes between the support actors and the business support organizations. And this points to the need for our improved coordination, for greater inter-MSME cooperation and collaboration models, and strengthen institutional support frameworks at the national and the regional levels. And finally, we are well aware of the issue of finance. And we know that self-financing can limit growth. We cannot capitalize on our market opportunities by depending exclusively on our self-financing. And at the same time, agriculture is often identified as a sector with high risk. And many of our MSMEs, we hear stories every day of them being turned away with excellent products, excellent ideas from many of our financial institutions. So we need to look at developing alternative financing options and improving financial management, which has been identified, poor cash flow, for example, is identified as a major reason why they fail. In terms of what has worked for ICA as an institute, in terms of correcting the asymmetries in terms of information. We have an example, a clear example recently where, and I want to refer to the COVID situation where we had a disruption in trade between St. Vincent and Trinidad and Tobago due to the COVID-19 lockdowns. And we were able to have the private sector work with the public sector to adopt e-certification procedures for phytosanitary certificates that facilitated trade. So for us, that's an example, but we also want to do a lot more in terms of correcting this information asymmetries for our youth and women-led MSMEs. And this is an important operational aspect of our work on the ground in the Caribbean. In terms of exporting, enhancing export readiness, this is something that we've been having discussions with Caribbean Export. We have focused a lot since our work under the 10th EDF Agriculture Policy Program on how we could support MSMEs to access regional and international markets. We recognize that the potential is there. They need to go beyond local and mainstream domestic markets to regional markets, and this is going to be key. The issue of support, development and branding, the whole issue of peer-to-peer mentoring that I mentioned, we've seen great success with doing peer-to-peer mentoring. We're bringing groups from Trinidad to work with chocolate makers here at Miku. So we have the Miku chocolate brand that was due to a peer-to-peer collaboration. The whole issue of investments in accessible and practical techniques and technologies. The photograph there, we've had we've seen in the apiculture industry here in St. Lucia, a lot of breakthroughs in terms of using technology that significantly increases productivity in the apiculture industry, and the whole issue of collaborative rural enterprise development, where we've been working with young leaders such as Alpha Senna, the young entrepreneur who leads the AgriMan concept, to work with developing backyard and small scale commercial vegetable production to supply community markets. So we've been doing some of this work, and some of these things have been working well for us. And I just want to close by saying that for us, MSMEs are all about people. And these are some of the very successful young entrepreneurs and some of our stakeholders who have developed innovative products and services that are now being not just produced locally, but also being exported. Thank you very much for your attention, and I pass it back over to Kareem. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. And let me just invite Deodat and Ashley to join us on video as we get into the question and answer and discussion component. And we have assigned just about 10 to 12 minutes to get that done. And just a reminder for those of you who do have questions and comments, feel free to post that into the question and answer box that is available on the Zoom chat, available to you, our viewers and listeners as well. And very interesting conversations. And what I would say is to our panelists, from where I sit as head of the competitive business unit at the OECS Commission, all of these conversations and challenges which all of you have raised and the opportunities obviously are collectively part of our strategy for helping MSMEs to channel through the innovative sphere through the digital sphere, and obviously breaking down the barrier of access to finance. Ashley, if I may come to you first, with regards to the conversation around digitization, asking for your budget, but was it material to get your brick and mortar company off the ground to meet international markets through a digital space? And was it specifically as a result of the pandemic you were forced to get through that medium?
Very good question. I'll be honest to say that when we were setting up the business in 2016, we did go to a number of local banks to finance the equipment and the operation of what we were doing. What we did not really foresee would be the investment into the digital aspects of the business. So really, no was the answer. We did not really put much attention or focus on our Instagram, on e-commerce, really on purchasing via the website. It was very much around producing a product which was meant to be used in restaurants and hotels. So really what that taught us was, first of all, the financial institutions that we borrowed the money from were not sympathetic to our developmental objectives. They were very hard-nosed commercial banks, which was very painful in the COVID period. So coming back to what Deodat and Greg were saying, absolutely, having the right financial support mechanisms is key. And it's key not so much because of the availability of the finance. It has to be key that they are understanding your vision and understand and can work with you to navigate through that vision. So when times go hard, as they will do when setting up a business, they can work with you in that flexibility space. But in terms of the investment into the digital world, COVID really made us forced us into it. And that's when we sort of realized that this is something that many startup business really need to have that digital plan in place, because it's if people are not aware that you exist, it's a harder challenge.
Thank you, Ashley. And Deodat, to bring it into context, we have a few questions that I think I could pose one to you. With regards to expanding the SME organization, and you spoke about export readiness, what do you think may be some critical areas of focus? And I would hasten to suggest one from an incubator style and an accelerator style. If you could give us two versions of what these areas of focus could be for firms that want to move along the dial of the MSME medium.
Yeah, well, I may not be able to give you the specific responses that you're speaking, but one, I mean, the question is valid with respect to, I mean, how can SME expand? I mean, we are the Caribbean Export Development Agency. We have a direct grant scheme. So I would encourage participants to go to our website, carib-export.com, to learn how to access our grant. The next call will be next month, so look out for it. That's one. But secondly, the two sectors that are really critical, I think, having a product like what Ashley has, a niche product for a niche market at a premium price. That's one. Secondly, I really enjoyed Greg's presentation because we are the most food insecure region on the planet. And coupled with that is the fact that the average age of a farmer is 55, which tells you, and Greg knows more about these things than I do, is that we need to get young people into agriculture. But how do you get young people into agriculture? They don't have the notion they should be digging with a fork and a hoe in the hot sun all day. It's about ag tech. It's about leveraging technology into agriculture. And that's precisely why we are the Caribbean Export Development Agency. So for example, on the 5th of October, we're having an investment summit on ag tech, headlined by His Excellency, the President of Guyana. But the point I want to make is that policymakers and institutions like ICA, which is already doing such fantastic work, right? We all need to join forces to make agriculture not something that helps us to become more food secure, that is important, but also how we can create precious jobs and how we can create opportunity for our people and bring the young people into the sector. So Greg, I'm making you a speech for you, my friend, but I think you understand this better than I do. And the last point is something I said earlier, is that as Caribbean people, our creativity really basically knows no limits, but we are not tapping into that creativity. We're not commoditizing it. So for us, it's about the musician performing at the hotel in St. Lucia for tourists, or in Barbados or Trinidad and Tobago for Carnival. But our artists, or people who are involved in the fashion industry, it's the business of music, it's the business of fashion. And we need to provide that training and that support for them so they can become entrepreneurs and they can tap into markets that already exist, because we have no shortage of agreements. We have an economic partnership agreement with the United Kingdom. We have an economic partnership agreement with the European Union. We have Caribbean with Canada, with Cuba, with Costa Rica, Colombia, but we are not taking advantage of those. And therefore, my view, A, niche products for niche markets, one, B or two, ag tech into agriculture, and C, that creative sector, absolutely critical going forward. Because it's not about just creating any kind of job, it's about their families.
Maybe if I just hold you just for a minute before I move on to Greg. Do you think policy needs execution within our Caribbean basin? So it's great that we develop the policies within our organizations, across government, across our development agencies. Do you think our MSMEs are particularly meeting these policies head on? Are they aware of it from your experience? Do you think they are minded to look for these policies, or do you think they are more eager to get the execution and get access to those grants to move the dial along? Do you think policy is taking too long?
Is that question directed at me?
You do that. Yes, I just wanted to hold it for another minute. Yeah.
I think they need a lot of support. One, so for example, the whole repertoire of trade agreements, a lot of people just don't know about them, and that's why we're helping businesses understand the trade agreements, help them understand what are the market requirements, what are the certification requirements. And you have outliers like the Trinidad and Tobago Fine Cocoa Company doing well, right? And we can learn a lot from Ashley and the work of his business. But in the main, no. And I actually think when you look at the ease of doing business index, I mean, people in the business community, they'll tell you, we take far too long to set up a business, okay? To register a business in the UK may take 24 hours. Mauritius, which is ranked like 13th in the world in terms of the ease of doing business index, is a country like a Caribbean country. Similar problems, challenges, but even more remote. But they're ranked higher than Germany, Italy, Spain, Australia. So our policymakers really have to act with alacrity. And I think our MSMEs have to work, to work together and in coherence to create that strong lobby that is required, because the data and numbers tell you, 50% of employment, 70 to 80% of GDP. So they are quite powerful, but they must act in concert.
Thank you, Deodat. And you made a very interesting point. And I believe in a former webinar we had at the Competitive Business Unit, I remember making the point that being able to compete doesn't mean you cannot partner. I think a lot more partnership must exist across our Caribbean basin, the Eastern Caribbean extended through the CARICOM. Greg, if I could pull you into this conversation, someone is asking about the option and the access to peer-to-peer mentorship across the agri-food and agro-product development space. Is there any supporting system mechanism that is readily available for MSMEs who may want to propel, possibly from grassroots through to micro, through to medium, and in essence, move along the dial to get involved in the agri-food and agri-feed business?
Kareem, I am not aware of any structured mechanism in place. I think it's something that we need to work on urgently. We've been doing it in ICA, in MSMEs from one community into another to share their experience, and we've been seeing that there's been rapid take-up of an understanding of knowledge and approaches and capacity building and so on. But it's not a structured program that has dedicated resources and so on. So there's something that I believe that we need to throw out there, where we start to use our MSMEs who have been doing it and who want to share with others a lot more effectively, so that, because people learn, they tend to learn a lot more from each other than they learn sometimes from consultants who sometimes come but have never necessarily done it in a very practical sense. So yes, I believe that it is something that we need to do a lot more of, and that maybe we need to push for some more structured programs, both at the national and regional levels, that support peer-to-peer type mentorship.
Greg, I think just to keep you on there, interestingly, we speak about the structural programs, and I know across the Caribbean, we have the idea of introducing agriculture within our primary and tertiary level education. But are we satisfied though that we are doing enough within the educational institutions to make agriculture a business, getting it from agriculture to agribusiness, and helping the agri-food processing development space in the region?
I think we are making some progress, not at the pace that we would like. That made reference to the fact that the agricultural sector is a key opportunity given the level of food imports. And there's a commitment at the level of heads of government to reduce this at the regional level by 25%. We need to look and see how we can really bring that into fruition. I think if one of the fundamental issues, and Dara pointed to it, is the issue of technology. I really want to commend the Caribbean Export for that Caribbean Agri-Tech Investment Summit, which does two things. It focuses on agricultural technology, but it also seeks to bring investment, which is much needed, into the sector. At the same time, the issue of youth participation. We've been seeing youth come into the sector, and they're coming in and they're getting involved in certain areas. And there's a lot of room for bringing young people into agriculture, but we need to be able to demonstrate the application of modern technologies that will make it attractive to young people. And we've been doing that, and we've been seeing young people coming in, but maybe not at the rate that we would need to really accelerate the sector and then see the kind of growth that we would want to achieve. So yes, some things are happening. We have at the level of some of our schools, we have agricultural programs, we have the agricultural CXC program. The 4-H is not as vibrant as it used to be across the region. That is not something that is very, very vibrant. So what we need to do is to really make it a business opportunity. Demonstrate that there's money to be made in this sector. Once money can be made, people will come to the sector. And we need to therefore be able to demonstrate in a very clear way what those opportunities are in terms of high returns on investment in certain areas, what are some of the new technologies. But when you attract youth, and I want to emphasize this, Kareem, when you attract youth into the sector, you have to also provide them with the support. You need to have the financing, you need to have the arrangements for accessing land as necessary, appropriate support services. And this brings me to the issue of support services. The MSMEs in the agri-food sector often fall between the cracks. Many of them, the ministries of agriculture tend to be focused on primary production, the farmers. You have ministries of the industry and commerce and so on, dealing with some of the aspects relating to commerce and business. But the MSMEs, the small producers in particular, tend to fall between the cracks, and there's no one really understanding their needs and responding to their needs. What we are calling for, we try to do it by brokering, by saying to them, look, you need to go to this person to get this information. You need to go to this person. We could put you in contact with these people who can help you. But it is a lot of time and energy going all over the place. And we need to have, therefore, these more coordinated approaches to the delivery of support services to MSMEs in the countries in the region.
So great point, Greg. And I can tell you from where we sit from the competitive business unit, we are actually working on a project to develop a platform. It's a market information platform, which in essence brings together the sectoral and thematic spaces across the MSME space with the intention to connect MSMEs with stakeholders. And as you rightfully said, the movement and the time consuming, as Deodat said, the indicator of doing business is very poor in the Caribbean because we waste too much time in getting things off the ground. So our intention with this platform, it's far off from being implemented, but we're working through the architecture of it, is in essence to, one, reduce the time for research, reduce the time to connect stakeholders that are relevant to the development of business. Actually, I'd like to bring you in here with regards to youth and women across the MSME space. We have seen across the Caribbean an introduction of a number of female entrepreneurs and owners and developers across the business space. Give me your experience from your organization in Trinidad within the cocoa space, whether it is from the raw material, through the production, through the service component of selling. You know, what has it been for you in introducing youth and women within your space? Did we lose Ashley? We might have lost Ashley. Let's give him some time to come on. Deodat, do you want to jump in terms of the women in MSMEs and what it means for development across our Caribbean space?
Well, I can tell you as a development person that when women are supported in any project globally, okay, they tend to do better, one, and the incomes that they earn go to their families instead of the bars and rum shops and other places. And they tend to reinvest and do better. And that is why we at the Caribbean Export Development Agency, we focus a lot on women. And now with our new strategic plan 2021 to 2024, young people in the Caribbean. Young people are not the future. We love to say young people are the future. Young people are the present because 60% of our population, they're under the age of 25. And that is why with our direct assistance grant scheme, when you look at the data, about 52% of all our grants up to 15 to 20,000 euros go to women entrepreneurs. And therefore, to my mind, that's a sector and a group that must be supported. Because when you look at the data, in terms of unemployment and the impact of COVID-19, the impact is great. I like what Greg said. Greg said, we're not talking about numbers, we're not talking about abstract theories, we are talking about people and creating precious jobs. And therefore, the impact of COVID-19, it has really impacted the most vulnerable amongst our populations. And those would be indigenous people in places like, Guyana, Suriname, and it would be young people, and it would be females and female-headed households. And therefore, how do you deal with that issue? You have to have a focus on this particular sector, which is precisely what we are doing, and is something that I strongly encourage and support.
Greg, we have literally 4 minutes left to this wonderful panel. I want to give you an opportunity before going back to Deodat to give me a summary of your thoughts and possibly touching on women in agriculture and agri-food, and how do you think this can grow and drive our economies across the member states?
I agree with Deodat. Women are key. In fact, we at PeertoPeer have been focusing and putting a lot of emphasis on working with and organizing women in agriculture. We have the Caribbean Network of Rural Women Producers with chapters in a number of different countries. We've been working with them to help, organize them, to put them into clusters where they can work together, because very often, individually is a challenge for them. So what we try to do is to work with them together. One of the issues that we believe we need to address in relation to the approach as women go about developing the innovative products and services is that very often we miss market opportunities at the intermediary level. Most of the MSMEs are actually building brands. So building brand is a significant process. Most of them tend to get directly into building a brand that has to be promoted and sold and so on. We are seeing that there's an opportunity to produce a lot of intermediate goods that go into final processing that is not being captured by some of our MSMEs. And we are saying that everybody doesn't have to be involved in finished products for the market. You can also do intermediate products. And this is something that we've been trying to push to them, to get them to work together as a group to do some of those intermediate products, because you need more volume in that case. It's often said that $1 in the hand of a woman is much better spent, as Deodat indicated, $1 in the hand of a man, based on health, education, and other social requirements. And so we believe that they are key, but also because there's so many women. I think the figures I put up, 40% of the MSMEs in the region are led by women. And therefore, that is an important statistic. It's higher than the percentage for Latin America and the Caribbean as a whole. So it shows that the women in the Caribbean are actually playing a much more dynamic role as MSME leaders. And we therefore need to jump ahead of it and work with them and support them. They're very disciplined. A lot of them are very hardworking, very focused on their outcomes, but we need to ensure that when they invest that effort into producing these very innovative products, these innovative services, that we can push them to the next level where they can get their products into mainstream markets. We need to be able to develop that export readiness, essentially, for them to be not only to focus on domestic markets, but also on regional and international markets.
Thank you so much, Greg. So much to unpack from your intervention today. Deodad, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to give me your final thoughts across the board on the thematic area today on innovative MSMEs and how export is going to be grown exponentially across the region in the few years to come.
Yeah, one, technology is your friend, so leverage opportunities of e-commerce and digitalization. Two, we have a multiplicity of trade agreements, so MSMEs must take advantage of them. Thirdly, at the Caribbean Export Development Agency, our focus is on you. Most of our support provided the MSMEs. And the final point that I will take an extra 5 seconds is to really congratulate the OECS and the organizers for a wonderful event and a wonderful session today. You guys are ahead of the curve and ahead of the game. So well done, you did an excellent job. And thanks to Ashley and Greg, it was a pleasure for me.
Thank you. And what I would want to tell our viewers, there is a poll up. Please take the opportunity to share with us your thoughts on this panel today. We are excited about the rest of the Sustainable Development Summit. It continues. For those of you who are jumping off in a while, remember we do have the all-anticipated dialogue on access to climate finance, and that you should come back to the lobby area at 5:30 this evening to touch base with us again and to become more educated and enthusiastic about the work that the OECS is doing across the space with our partners. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Deodad. Thank you, Ashley. And we didn't get a chance to jump back in, but we really appreciate it and enjoyed all your presentation. And we look forward to working with you and partnering with you in the future. With that, we are signing off. Thank you so much.
Thanks so very much. Goodbye, everybody. And you did a great job.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.